afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming. You know, I was listening outside of the previous session, and you know, there are a lot of talk about China, and I think there will be some overlapping from the previous one, but we also have some uniqueness to this group of people, and we would just like to share a little bit about our perspective and make this a real interactive session. Anytime you have any question, raise your hand, and we can, instead of you know, just us talking, you know, of course we will save time for the Q&A, but we can just blend it all in and make it a really interactive, because your question probably will be, you know, not just beneficial to you, but also beneficial for all the folks here. Again, thank you so much for Life Science Nation for inviting me, and also I can speak for the panelists here, and to be on this panel, we really appreciate that. My name is Larry Cai, and I represent a Chinese pharmaceutical company called Qilu, and I know it's not easy to say, and I heard a different kind of a variety of a pronunciation. Qilu is another one, so there's a whole new, totally different thing we're not going to discuss here, but we have a very distinct panel here. I would just like to, you know, pass along and let the panelists introduce themselves and also the company they represent, and then we can get into a few topics we prepared. As I said earlier, anytime you have a question, feel free to raise your hand and jump in. It's a small enough group we can all just you know, talk to each other as you know, a dialogue instead of just a panel discussion. Okay, I'll turn over to my friend.
Okay, thanks everyone for being here, and thanks the organizers for the opportunity to speak here. I'm Yuan Huading. I'm a member of the Pfizer External Science and Innovation team. I cover Asia Pacific. I have several colleagues working with me, looking for opportunities for R&D partnership in the Asia Pacific region, including Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Korea, Japan, and China. We cover almost every aspect of our R&D scope remit, from very early academic partnership for novel target, novel technology, to seeding early companies, to investment into mature biotech companies, to licensing preclinical, early clinical stage assets, as well as merger acquisition for smaller biotech companies. That's really for global. As you know, Asia, particularly China, is still in early stage. Those kind of opportunities are relatively rare at this time.
Hi, I'm Tim McGuire. I head up our corporate development group at Loyer Boston. We are a global pharmaceutical company that was started back in the 90s. We have a pretty large footprint, so we have 3 major operations in China. We just opened a branch in Japan. We have a diagnostics group in Singapore, a hospital group in Australia. Feel free to ask about the diversity later on if you want to in terms of assets. But and then we have a ClinReg group in Princeton, and then our early stage innovation group in Boston as well. And I'd say my major role is looking at early stage acquisitions, anywhere from proof of concept up to about phase 1, phase 2, in both the biologics and small molecule space. And then, but also, all of our global BD team assists each other. So we do help out with diagnostics. So I was helping out with diagnostics last week. And then we do M&As and sponsored research programs as well, too, both with CROs as well as academic facilities, too. Thank you.
All right. My name is Jian. I'm the Senior Director of BD and Investment at Simcere, Boston office. Simcere is a leading Chinese pharmaceutical company in manufacturing, developing, and marketing innovative medicines, as well as branded generic drugs. We have over 4,000 employees globally, and we have over 50 products on China's market. And Simcere is uniquely looking for partnering opportunities globally. Our partners include BMS, GSK, Daiichi Sankyo, Capacity, etc. And Simcere has invested in multiple leading venture capital firms, such as Partners Innovation Fund, the Cormorant, and also the Elibridge Group. And in addition, we have invested in various emerging biotechs, such as Veritas, Immunocore, and some other companies in both in US and Europe. Personally, I was a medicinal chemist by training. I worked at Novartis as a medicinal chemist for almost 9 years. Then I got an MBA from Yale, and I joined a boutique venture capital firm for 1 year. And I also started my own company with a professor from Tufts University and raised capital from China. So I do have some experience in raising capital, and I also have some investment experience. So some experience on both sides. So hopefully I can help you answer some questions.
Great. Do you want the money? Go ask him.
You have more.
I'm representing Hengrui Therapeutics, or in China called Jiangsu Hengrui Medicine. We are the oncology company. In the beginning, now we cover almost as many as you can imagine. Total of about 12,000 employees, and market cap it's about $20 billion with 1.6 billion sales US in last year. The company has been switching from generic to brand name. So in last few years, we put three new drugs onto the market. The advantage of the company is because of the sales force, and also because we have high quality manufacture. So we have some drugs on the US market, inspected by almost every regulatory agencies globally without issues. My role is as a corporate strategy and also business development. So I'm looking for anything innovative, basically. If it's later stage, we are more acceptable toward me-too type of molecule. But if it's really early, it's as covered in this area, has to be first in class potential. Because we have internally we have about 1,300 scientists, and we are now trying to transfer out from me to me better into truly first in class, really innovative company.
Thank you, and a few words about the Qilu Pharmaceutical. It is ranked, among the top 10 pharmaceutical companies in China, and it's as just like many pharmaceutical companies in China, it transitioned from generic biosimilar to innovative and new therapeutics. And the main overarching philosophy for Qilu is trying to serve as many patients in China as possible. That means we're looking into the areas where a lot of unmet medical need. Two specific areas, one is oncology, and the other one is liver disease. So that runs, for oncology, where you go with a lot of patients and that, such as non-small cell lung cancer, gastric, esophageal, liver cancer, colorectal. And for liver disease, you run the gamut from HBV, cirrhosis, NASH, and of course HCC as well. So that's a little bit about the Qilu, and I just want to when we did the TC, we talked about how we can make this really providing value for our audience, and it just maybe by show of hands, I assume you guys here because of the China angle, but any of you have worked or is in talk with Chinese counterparts? Please raise your hand. Okay, that's about 30%, 40% of the audience. And I think it might be beneficial to ask the panel their take on the current landscape. There's a lot of changes, and what do they see at the moment, especially from your perspective. You cover so much. You have a lot of experience in Asia, even globally. But what make China right now is make it different than the time before, and also make it uniquely different from the rest of the world.
That's a big question. Okay, so thanks. So from Pfizer perspective, from R&D innovation point of view, we're really looking for the most innovative, most differentiated programs or technology globally, regardless whether it's from US, Europe, or in Asia. So in that perspective, Pfizer is really, China is really early stage of development, almost emerging stage. I've been on this job for a number of years. I've seen CRO started in China and getting crowded, and then these days a lot of CROs start looking to finding ways get involved in early startup companies for innovative programs. I think it's a very exciting stage in China. If I look at the landscape in Asia Pacific, taking Japan, Korea, and China as a comparison, and historically Japan has been very successful in delivering. Japanese pharma companies has been successful delivering world-class therapeutics to the global market. That hasn't happened in Chinese pharmaceutical companies yet. Then you see Japan being very advanced in science, right? And a very mature pharma company. There's missing middle part. The biotech company, VC community in Japan is very weak for a variety of reasons. And then you see Korea come up, and Korea is very strong. I think there's a couple of speakers in the next panel about Korea. Korea is very strong in biotech, but in terms of basic research, translational research, basic research in Korea is relatively weak. Translational research, Korea government invested a lot of money in clinical trial. That actually helped Korea, and also KFDA has been providing very supportive environment for clinical trials. So Korea, I would see actually more pretty innovative startups in Korea relative to Japan in the last few years. Where I see China is, as of today, is very similar Korea 3-4 years ago. 3-4 years ago, when I went to Korea, I really didn't see much. And the last 2 to 3 years, I've seen a lot of progress and very exciting stuff. And then China is really in a similar transition state where Korea is. So what I like, I hope is with CFDA changing policy, a lot of returnees from well-established US, Europe academic groups going back to China, starting their own lab, bringing ideas up from China, and the CRO groups getting mature, providing basic supporting system, capable personnel running the lab, running the company, and a very rich VC or investment environment in China. So I think there will be huge potential for China to be a world biohub, leading biohub in the coming years. So I don't want to take all time from my fellow panelists.
So you think the ecosystem is getting ready for the true innovation?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and during our practice and Tim, you mentioned a lot of very innovative collaborations Leah had with as far as sponsored research, just the early stage. Do you mind to share a little bit with the audience?
Sure. So having been a VC myself in a former life, you see a large trend. I think that's very positive these days that you didn't see 10 years ago. Of course, as investors, we always have to look at de-risking assets. But now it's the first question is always science, and I like that approach. And I mean, it really, you see that coming forth from China. I think, you know, the market potential always has to be there, right? And the best companies will understand what the unmet need is, et cetera. But then being able to really dig down and driving the technical and science risk assessment, I think is very valuable. So, you know, from that standpoint, that's really how we tend to invest, and I think that's something new that we've adopted, or at least that I've adopted now, working with a Chinese-based company. But yes, I think there's a lot of opportunity now too, since we are getting into this earlier space, and you can find McKinsey trends and things, or white papers and things on this, where even large pharma now is investing very early stage to mitigate their risk, as opposed to say like an M&A, right? To test the waters of a new product or a new technology. So that's, to your point, that's what we try to do is, you know, in addition to looking at, you know, early stage startups, we actually look at a lot of innovative CROs now too, within the US, Europe, and Asia, and try to identify new technologies that can potentially be derived there. But then we maintain, which I'm sure everyone does, but you know, you try to maintain that strong academic network as well too, with a higher propensity now for risk to bring in new technologies. So as you were saying before, I think, you know, the time is right now to bring a lot of innovations to the table, and I think you know, China's a good catalyst in that movement. So.
Thank you, Tim. And Jen, do you mind to share a little bit about Sincere's view on early stage companies, because we're at Resi, right?
Yeah, I can share. Sincere is also my personals. I just joined the Sincere last month, so probably still need some time to fully understand Sincere's strategy. But from the track record, Sincere, as I mentioned, is one of the Chinese companies that invest globally, looking for partnering investment opportunities. We invested in like very leading biotechs such as Veritas, Immunocore, Oxford Nanopore, etc., and also some startups from Harvard professor, for example, like very small seed capital. And so it varies a lot. And we focus on 5 areas: oncology, immunology, and infectious disease, CVM, and neurology. So particularly any companies in these 5 areas, of course, are very interesting to us, because anyway, we are strategic investors. And from my personal experience, I want to add on to Yuanhua's comments, because I raised the capital for the boutique venture capital firm first in 2014, 2015. And at that time, I went back to China, and all these LPs will ask me, what do we plan to? And what they want to hear is you do new drug development. That's something that you try to avoid. In 2014, just 3 years ago. Then from 2015, suddenly changed. People start to be interested. And at that time, I started that startup with a professor, as I said. We are developing quite bold ideas for microbiome products related to neuroscience. And we are doing diagnosis at first and therapeutics later. And this kind of bold ideas attract attention and got investment in millions. And from that time period to now, I really saw the boom of investment in the innovative drug development. And I think a couple of things maybe helped. Most importantly, probably is the IPO of that pharmaceutical, Beta IOE. And all these Chinese investors suddenly realized that actually investment on innovative drug companies not only can launch the product onto the market, but also can IPO the company, so they can capitalize it and recruit the investment. I think that's a catalyst of the mindset of many investors. And I have quite a good network with top VC venture capitalists, and I think they all agree now that new drug development is the next thing for China, and that's a golden time. So nobody wants to miss this opportunity. And personally, I always met people from China, investors in other areas like TMT, especially, and some like green tech or agriculture or anything, they now try to switch to the pharmaceutical biotech area, even if they don't have experience. So I think it's really a good opportunity for you guys because they're desperately looking for investment opportunities in drug, medical device, diagnostics, even though they don't have any experience. So try to get this opportunity and get your capital.
Thank you, Jen. And Weimin and Hengrui has been leading the innovation in therapeutics in China for quite a while, and we all know you have our licensed innovation programs to U.S. companies. And would you mind share a little bit of Hengrui's perspective in that regard?
Sure. Actually, I totally agree with James' comments about my personal opinion is doesn't matter how you feel about research and development in China's advancement last few years. It's a great leap forward, but still, U.S. and Europe is much far ahead of China at this moment. So that's why the capital in China, including the money from Hengrui, we are seeking innovative programs from US and Europe. And I think there's one thing which in China's company like Hengrui can help is because we are a pharmaceutical company, we have investment office in Wall Street, and if we work together, we bring your molecule in and we quickly advance your molecule toward clinical development to a certain stage, and then we will partner it back out to US or global. Basically, one of the way we look at it is like quickly amplify your program value immediately. And also we, from Hengrui side, as you know that we licensed our molecules to like inside the last few years, 2 years ago. And there's more things ongoing because with 1,300 scientists and internally, initial goal was to develop a me better, me best class of molecule, but you never know. Sometimes you stumble into something which you say, like one of our molecule, it's in US clinical development, and now we believe it's one of the potential first in class. This kind of thing do come out from China. Although small number, as Dr. Ding said, truly innovative things, it's still limited from China, but it's coming. It's coming, and I hope that with this kind of two-way collaboration, we will see more and more. And especially remember, 2016, I believe it's 150 billion investment from China to the U.S. market.
That's great. And now that we have the lay of the land all displayed in front of you, and we like to turn it say from each individual company's perspective, what you're looking for, what kind of advice you would give the entrepreneurs, the startups, when they try to forge a collaboration with all the individual companies. Anyone want to take the first crack?
I can start with that. So I had 2 startups actually back in the day too that I was able to license out. I think that the key is being able to understand the overall investment theory of a large strategic. VCs are good money, don't get me wrong. VCs are hard to find money. Having a strategic on your side, say when you're trying to close out a Series A, for instance, is a big push in the right direction for you. So being able to find the correct strategics and then aligning with what their growth strategy is, if you can kind of fit that sweet spot, I think you're able to get some progress there, and like I said, it helps bring in the venture capital money as well too.
So.
Because I'm representing not a VC, so I'm just looking from the pharmaceutical point of view. If I were a startup, if anybody we discuss, I would like you to take a look at Hengrui's strategic pipeline. I mean, it's all those information are public. For me, I'm looking at it something which is strategically fit. Does not necessarily your program has to be the most advanced or most innovative, but has to be happen to be fitting into the gap which I'm missing. Everybody has a long list of program ongoing. So this is one thing I will recommend. And another thing is that at least, I mean, maybe just this comes to like a personal style. Say I have 3 people team and 1 people is purely focused on M&A. So I actually have 2 people evaluating program. And we are dealing with 600 programs each year normally. And so I will suggest that if anything coming on to us, the first 2 slides highlights your differentiating point and your value, how to contribute to Henry's strategic pipeline. And that way will attract our focus, and then we will finish reading the whole thing. I received a lot of slides or emails. Spend most of the time in the first 5 slides talking about general things, and especially we are talking about NSCLC, we are talking about $10 billion market. Those kind of things, actually we don't need to be re-educated. So just go to the meat. Thank you.
And yeah, if you're particularly looking for Chinese investors, I think you have to find your own Chinese angle, right? So like for me, naturally, I'm Chinese, so I have some connections already, so it's easier for me. But if you are really interested in the capital from China, maybe you can start to develop this kind of connection. And also, like co-worker or co-founder have some China background, that definitely can help. And also, if your patent you cover the China area, that definitely a big plus. And, sometimes it's actually a deal killer if you don't have the China right? Yeah. So I think, and also, I also want to share some of my personal experience, my failures at the beginning of my investment entrepreneurship experience. Around 2014, I started a transition from the scientist to the business. So I tried to raise capital for the boutique venture capital firm and try to know all kinds of LPs in China. And one is like a public company, public pharmaceutical company. And from the first meeting, the chairman and said, yeah, I want to invest. So I have been in the US for too many years. I saw that the kind of oral offer will be honored. And, but after a long time discussion, and they didn't really, they're not really interested. So I got confused. What is? I asked one another, like, why do you do that? But finally I found that actually I started to have reverse culture shock myself. And the Westerners cannot understand that at all, I think. It's not as gracious, they are not cheating. But in Chinese, like, 我要投, I'm interested, it means. Like, I'm wondering if we want to invest or not. It doesn't really mean, it means actually like, we are not going to not invest, how to describe. Right? Like, the first impression I got was, wow, they're really interested. And the chairman is like, tell the president, that's so interesting. And well, I want to invest like this. But it's not, how to describe, maybe it's language difference, it's culture difference, but it's not equal to the Western oral agreement. Then it creates lots of like misunderstanding. Like, oh, Chinese don't honor this kind of oral agreement, or they are not ethical, or they are not trustworthy. I don't think so. Just different culture, different language sometimes. well told. It's not I want to invest. It's just I'm wondering if I want to invest. But as a Chinese myself, I didn't understand at that time. I wasted lots of time, and I actually didn't maintain a good relationship with that chap, which I really regret, because he didn't behave anything unethical, and I just misunderstood him, and I really think that. Then another example is a fund of fund, big size, and in billions of dollars, and I only did like 5 million or 10 million for my venture capital firm, and he always keep contacting with me. Like, when I ask question, if they want to, they're interested, still interested, or share my investment portfolio, or they will share their own. Like, give me the impression they will invest. And when I ask them, they never say no. That it's natural to Chinese that, because Chinese don't say no, right? I'm a Chinese myself. I've been in US for 15 years. I kind of forget the Chinese culture myself. And if they don't say no for half a year, I thought they will invest because it's a big size fund of fund. And they always keep talking with me, and they never say no. And when I ask them, they never say no. But finally I realized actually I'm wasting time. Never say no is our culture, right? I forget myself. Then how Westerner can understand that? But that kind of subtle difference will affect your experience, efficiency. I waste lots of time on this public company and this fund of fund. So I hope my personal experience, you can avoid that 2 mistakes. First is, I want to invest orally, doesn't mean I really want to. It means I'm going to reject at this moment. Then second, they never say no, and don't think never say no means I want to invest. And really need to master this culture difference and the language difference.
Anything to add, Tim? And all right, so
Can I just actually want this? That's why they want us here.
Oh.
We are the bridge because that's why in Henry we have about 50 people in Princeton, New Jersey. All of the initial program business discussion is handled in Princeton office. If you have a chance to meet the chairman by himself, that's the formality in the last slide.
Great, I think those are great. Yes, questions?
So I'm wondering from corporate ventures perspective, in terms of business, or in terms of investment and partnership opportunities. So with for Chinese companies, for Chinese pharmaceutical companies particularly, how do you guys evaluate the China right versus global right? Do you prefer to pursue a global right in terms of investment and partnership opportunities, or you would like to more focus on the China right?
Tim?
So that's a very good question. I'd say, first and foremost, at least for Loyer, our clients are Chinese people that are sick, right? So it's always China rights first. The only time, and then there's the eventual growth potential for territories outside of China, right? But you're paying a higher price tag up front for global rights than you are Chinese rights. And again, your biggest population you're trying to serve is China. The only time that we've seen a deviation from that strategy is really in inorganic growth when we're going after M&As. So in that case, you want as large of an IP portfolio as possible. So the more countries, the better.
What do you want to add?
To me, actually, I deal with long industry. Say for we invest in phase 2 assets and beyond. Now, I will be more focused on China right. It's very simple. I don't have my sales team in US and Europe. If you give me the global right, it's wasted. But come back to me 5 years later. If 6 of my clinical trial product reach to NDA, I will have my commercial team. Then we're talking about global right. For early stage, we also invest in several companies in early stage, including university. we always insist on global rights because it makes no sense. We de-risk everything and then we find out we only, small pie out of it. And for I don't know about for other companies, but for Hengrui, because as of last month, our cap is more than Taiwan. So we position ourselves to be a global player. So we definitely eventually will have our global operation.
Well, sort of just to quickly follow up on this question. So by, very, very roughly estimate. So would you say like China right represent about a quarter of the global right, in terms of the value, or 1/5 of the value? How would you comment on that number?
Probably depends on the indication.
Okay.
Varies from indication to indication. For example, if you talk about HCC, China probably the biggest chunk of it.
Okay. So the range could be very broad.
Yeah, depends on disease prevalence.
Okay.
It's when you look at it, you start. If you want to do that, you need to look at the market. What's the patient, and of course you want to take the pharmacoeconomics into that, and the payer system, and the insurance, all those factors you need to put it in, and then you calculate backward. So you need to tell you the net present value, all that stuff. You can calculate it back. So that's a typical way of doing that. Actually, to touch upon the one other area, I think during the discussion we talk about when you evaluate incoming projects, how much emphasis you put on the technology and how much you put on the team. How do you really balance the people and the science? Anyone want to take a crack at it?
I can take that.
Yeah.
Well, I think we look at we pay attention to the team definitely. The credential experience of the team count a lot, particularly if it's early technology. If you have a phase 2 data, data speaks, right? And for early technology platform, mostly you're really looking at the scientific credential experience of the team and the management team's capabilities. So that probably that is very.
Anyone else want to?
It sounds based on people's backgrounds too. We're all looking kind of at the same therapeutic areas as well too. So I'd like to just reemphasize the point. A lot of the technologies, while differentiated, have a lot of similar characteristics. So you'd like to be able to differentiate based on technology, but I think that the team driver becomes a major aspect of decisions.
So I think right now is probably a good time to really open up the discussion to the audience. Any questions, just shout it out, raise your hand. Any question. We are here to have a dialogue and to help early stage companies as much as we can. Anything on your mind? Yes.
So I know that China rights are an integral part even of a direct investment. How would you guys recommend that a US-based small, earlier stage company evaluate what is the value they're handing over? Because it's unlikely they'll go to China and do epi, market research, all these things. What is the way that a China company, for instance, a CEO can explain to his board or her board what they're giving up when they decide to include China rights in a direct investment?
So, Willie, you want to take a crack at it because you talk about how the PPT, kind of grab your attention. First 2 pages, you want them to lay out this.
To answer your question straight is that my team will do China rights evaluation. That in agreement with Dr. Ding is each asset's China right value is different. So we will, it's totally integral part of the whole transaction. We have to evaluate the China's market value and also the local pharmaceutical economics. And one of the mistakes when I recently in discussion with several potential deal is one of my partners said, okay, the patient in US is 1 million, in China is 10 million, so I want 10 times more. It's not like that way. So the only thing is that, one example is GSK's vaccine. In US, you sell $30 per dose. In China, it's $11. And you are competing with a local company, $1. So all those things has to take into consideration, and then to figure out the value of total value in China for you to give out. This is the true market value of your asset. Another thing you also need to think about, China marketing is different from anywhere in the other country. There's one example is anesthetic or pain control market. AbbVie used to dominate in China because they are the only one approved there. So when Henlei's product came on the market, after approval, just take 1 year, reverse. We take 85% of Chinese market. So because the selling or the marketing process is totally different, and so now it make more sense as a biotech or medium-sized company. Is it make the value or you do the calculation? Does the number make sense to you for you to build an China sales team, or it's better find a China partner? Say for Henlei, we have 7,000 salespeople. Just tag into it. You just sitting there to collect your money. You have to calculate.
Yes, Michael.
There's been a major shift in China to go from generics to more of the targeted novel compounds. Well, with these targeted novel compounds comes prices in the United States that may be $40,000, $50,000, $70,000 per patient, like a Herceptin, Avastin, you're talking about cancer. How can you position that in the Chinese market, because maybe you can't afford those types of prices? Sometimes there may be an inflection point where the U.S. company can go below a certain price, but how do you determine the value of a potentially blockbuster targeted drug in the Chinese market?
Tim, you want to?
Yeah, see that one, it resonates with his point as well. There's no one straightforward answer, because reimbursement's very different over there, right? It's here, we have private payers, or you have Medicare, Medicaid. Over there, you have it at the federal level, you have it at the provincial level, or you could have it at the private payer level. Now that there's a higher amount of middle class people that have disposable income that can pay out of pocket for therapeutics. So you're right. I mean, the prices I don't think are equivalent, but if you look at margins, your margins are also different as well too. So there is some pricing flexibility that you have built into the system for manufacturing in China. So there's no straightforward answer, but I think having a clear-cut strategy on which route payment is coming through gives you an idea of which price bracket you can potentially fall into.
I'm not sure that answers my question totally. Give me an example. What would Herceptin sell for in the China market?
I don't know. I haven't done a comparables on that. So,
if I remember correctly, Herceptin specific case, the U.S. is, I believe it's about 60K, right? 60 to 80K.
Yeah.
In China, because it's approved by national, whatever the list, if I remember correctly, they are only 1/3 of the price of the U.S. That does not mean if your drug is lifesaver, cannot go to premium. If you believe your drug is the only one and can save life, remember there's equal U.S. population size of middle class. That's the premium market. But in China, the difference is there's no insurance system. Everybody's paid out of pocket. So a lot of times, if you have say for the Herceptin, and there's maybe Herceptin team which is similar as your drug efficacy, patient just hanging on there, and they will only charge it by 100% of the price. then you have to compete locally. So if you have, say PD1, I was assuming the first one reached the market, you can charge $100,000 or more. But only 2 years when my PD1 get approved, you have to drop to 10,000 because we were marketed at 10,000.
So move on quickly. We're out of time, and please join me in thanking my fellow panelists for their contribution.